Hey everyone, it's Norm from Tested, and to wrap up this week, I'm assembling and reviewing a model kit. This is a kit that I saw a lot online, actually popped up a lot on my Instagram feed. You may have seen ads for this on social media, but it's from a place called Moyu Store, and they're a web store that do a bunch of different mechanical kits, a lot of models, mostly static, but mostly in the same kind of aesthetic, almost a steampunk aesthetic, whether it's a combination of a laser cut wood and maybe some machined brass pieces, things that maybe like mechanical spiders and elephants and other types of creatures. But the one that caught my eye and the one that I saw lots of these ads for was this one, which they call a Mysterious Aviator. It's very much like a dragonfly, again, in this steampunk aesthetic, but this is one of their few models that actually animate. And so they offered to send me one, and I put it together today. And so we'll go through the process of what it took to put this together and how it works. So what you're actually watching right now is time-lapse footage of my assembly of this. The whole build took about 4 hours, and something that I thought was immediately noticeable was that this is actually a great build that if you want to work with 1, 2, or 3 other people, 4 people could tackle this together. It comes in this nice small compact box, and everything is packaged together. So all the hardware comes in these small little tackle boxes. Everything is labeled. You don't have to do any of the sorting of the hardware yourself, although in one of the boxes I did have a few pieces that had spilled into the other containers, but very easy to distinguish. And then the other parts are essentially the laser cut walnut here, as well as the brass pieces. And all of that gets sandwiched together, screwed together. None of this requires any glue. It's all done with hardware. And they do include a screwdriver, pliers, and also some tweezers for picking out the hardware parts. Although these are kind of cheap pieces, I'd recommend you bring your own iFixit screwdriver kit, as well as a nice pair of tweezers, because you'll be picking out these tiny nuts and tiny screws from these boxes. So looking at the instructions, first thing I did was actually go through all the instructions, and it's 18 pages, but there are parts where you're gonna have to go back and do multiples, just like you would like a Lego set. And so that's where I had to be mindful of where I wanted to optimize my efficiencies in terms of the assembly. Everything is compartmentalized, so it comes in, basically 5 different segments. There's the main body, there are these wheels, there are the wings, of course, and the base, and everything can be assembled separately first. So this is where, if you wanted to build this with a friend or family member, if you're doing a model kit build in lockdown, this would be really great to actually split among maybe up to 4 people to put together. And if you had 4 people, this would come together in maybe an hour and a half, no problem. As I'm putting this together, I'm noticing, most of the wood pieces are just accents. It's that look of the brass sandwiched between wood, and I really like this aesthetic, but it's also a lot of tiny screws. Basically, looking at the finished model, every single screw is something you put in, and there are about 3 to 4 different sizes of them of various lengths, and so you really have to be patient in terms of getting everything tight, but the instructions do a good job of letting you know which are the places and where are the places you actually need to pay attention for the tolerances, and also where you really need to tighten the screws. Most of this was very straightforward to put together. There were 2 places where I saw that the machine parts either didn't have the exact tolerances that I expected them to, and actually one of the pieces was not right. I think it wasn't the exact piece that was represented in the instruction manual. But I managed to work around that. That was the piece that locked the motor to the wings. It's basically where the set screws in, but still was able to complete the model and get it working, even though it did look like it was a mistaken piece. It's brass, so it's relatively forgiving. There are these rods that I had a little bit of difficulty getting them through the channels, and just taking a Dremel to some of the channels here, opening up the holes just a little bit. It was no problem to get everything fitted and then tightened then with those screws and nuts. At the core of the body, there is a motor and a gearing system that runs the two cams on either side of this creature. And you don't have to do any of that assembly. That is a completed unit out of the box. All you have to do is do the proper wiring that goes down the stock here and then into the base, and then you plug that into USB power. All right, so here we have the finished model, and just as a build and as an aesthetic piece, I think it's really nice. I had a lot of fun putting it together. It was really easy to just zone out, put on some music. There are only a few places where I do some problem solving, and of course the screws are really tiny, so you got to have that patience, but everything was nicely organized and sorted, and aside from that one piece on the inside here where I don't think they machined it properly, but I still got it working. It's a really nice kit to put together, and I was also really impressed and surprised by just the size of this thing. It's a great profile view, but the wingspan here is about 19 inches from edge to edge here, and that's just a really nice presence when it sits on this display. But the price of this is really high because it's also the animated model, and you'll see why I held off till the end to have it animating for you, and that's because number one, you can hear it. Yeah, the movement here, it works, it's okay, but you can see the gears just chugging, and it's not as smooth as I thought it would be. It really feels like the motor is underpowered, or it just needs to be ramped up, but also you can hear those gears turning, and that's, I don't think, quite a pleasant sound to have this just animating in your office space. So this is something where I probably want to just display it statically and If that's the case, then the static model, their other static models are something I would be more interested in than this animated one, because it is a much pricier model than the other ones. But if their other models are anything like this construction, the build quality, and this aesthetic, then you should definitely check those out, because I really love this aesthetic. I'll include a link to where you can find this and their other models in the comments and description below. But this is the Mysterious Aviator from Moyu Store. And if you've seen an ad or seen this popped up in catalogs, other places online, well, now you know how long it takes to assemble, about 4 hours, and the size of this thing, and how it animates. We'll be doing more kit builds in the future, maybe doing some live ones as well. This was a fun one to put together. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.